You are all very welcome back to our latest installation as Phil and I continue to count down the seconds ahead of Sunday's return to Premier League football. How is everything in your neck of the woods, buddy?
All good, mate. All good. Can't complain. Sun's shining as usual out here. How's your week? Been good?
Been good. We haven't had the sun. It was that anomaly the last time we spoke. We've had nothing but wind and rain since, but outside of that, everything has been okay. It's been a bit difficult in terms of watching every other team in Europe play football except us over the last few days. Did you catch much of the European football?
I watched the Real Madrid game yesterday, which was just unbelievable from Valverde. What a performance. Watched the Chelsea highlights. Saw the Arsenal penalty, which is truly baffling to me that was given as a penalty. And of course, I watched the Spurs match, which was just... There comes a point where you cross the line between, mocking other teams where you start to feel sympathy for a human being. And watching what Kinski went through, I'm like, we all dream about playing football on that level. And we all have a nightmare of getting completely exposed. You're naked in your dream somewhere, the embarrassment, the public shame. It's essentially that. And you're looking at them going, I can't imagine what that must have felt like for that poor lad in the changing room. Coming off a pitch, he must have just sat there and cried his eyes out. And some people never recover from that. It's cruel. It'd be brought off after 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Felt hard sorry for him.
We speak so much about how so many of these professional footballers, when they get to the ranks, they have something about them from a technical point of view and from a playing ability. But so often the thing that can separate the real elite footballers from guys that struggle to make a living is their mental fortitude. Is their ability to deal with pressure. We spoke several weeks ago, Phil, about academy players making the jump up to the senior ranks and just how difficult it is going from playing in front of maybe 50 people to playing in front of 10,000 people. All of those things add into it. And what Antonin Kinski endured the other night is probably about the most difficult situation that you could ever imagine. I mean, you're dealing with a keeper, Phil. He hadn't played since a 2-0 defeat, I think, to Newcastle in the League Cup. And that was almost 6 months ago. And then you get Igor Tudor, and he takes the decision to install him from the outset, going against Atletico Madrid in their own backyard. There's just such little logic to it. I know he's probably thinking that if this works, I'll look like a genius. But there's such little logic to what he did on that evening.
To me, I exculpate Tudor for the same way I exculpate Carrick on the Ted Malacia thing. I think when you put someone in, you're entitled to expect that won't happen. You may have a bad game. If he has a bad game, fine, but that's so beyond anything that you could legislate for or predict. It's just, to me, a freak one-off event. And, we get people, they're making all this money. Who cares? Well, they're still human beings. And I can assure you, when he's in that changing room crying his eyes out, which I almost certainly would have been, the money coming wouldn't have been a factor. And I know people are probably listening to this rolling their eyes, but, at the end of the day, you're still talking about a human being. And my heart, it's just one of those things where you wonder, does he ever recover from? And it was, it was almost, we've sat here on these podcasts and slated Onana at times, so maybe we're being unfair, but it was hard to believe.
It was hard to watch. You can have a bit of banter in football and going back and forwards, but that was just hard to watch. In the complete contrasting point of view, you mentioned Valverde. It's fantastic to see that happen to City, and a guy who's 27 years of age finally getting his flowers on the biggest stage. He's someone I've spoken about for a very, very long time. He's kind of that typical quintessential South American all-round battling midfielder who evidently is able to score a lot of goals as well, Phil. Just how good was he?
I mean, you're talking about a masterclass. Yeah,
Mm.
I just made a joke. Ironically, if he has bad 15 minutes on Saturday, the Real Madrid fans will have the white hankies out for him. They're just unbelievably spoiled. I actually said on my podcast with Monday with James about he's a player I would love at United.
Oh yeah.
Not giving it any serious thought that that's a possibility, but we'll get into that a bit later in the podcast about what potential midfielders could come to United, of course, with the potential Real Madrid midfielder potentially on that list. But when you watch football being played like that, we used to see this in the 90s quite a bit, where you'd see just these incredible individual performances that just stood out for you, and that. Yeah, I mean, I remember listening to Rooney talking about Clarence Seedorf's performance when he had played Milan, and just how he exceptionally was. There's so many times where we just see these incredible individual performances from great individual players that stand out, that survive a highlight reel for 25, 30 years. Valverde's hat trick against, let's be honest, City aren't what they were a couple of years ago, but they're still a top side. To go do that against Man City is absolutely fantastic. Just was great to watch. It could have been worse, Vinny Jr. missing the penalty.
Yeah, and whatever about City not being the side they were, he scored that hat trick on what many people believe to be the best goalkeeper in the world at the moment. So that can't be ignored either.
Well, on that, Shaun, right? What was Donnarumma doing? Was it for the second one where Valverde goes around him?
He forgot he was a goalkeeper.
He pulls his hand out of the way in the box, right, with the ball. And then I'm watching David Sanchez for Chelsea against PSG going, is this the best we have? I mean, I look at Lamens and going, I don't know, maybe Courtois, but how many goalkeepers would I swap Lamens for right now? And certainly none in the Premier League.
There's very, very few. If you're factoring in current ability alongside potential of what they could grow into, there's very, very few you'd swap them for.
I brought this up before, but goalkeeping, defending is about concentration, right? I mean, you develop a baseline technique, but it's mostly about concentration, right?
And confidence.
Yes, of course. It's you have to have a certain psychological profile, but confidence, of course. But you have to be able. If you don't have the ability to concentrate, so many goals are given from players just drifting, switching off. And I swear to God, I hate to bang on this drum, but I think it's the iPad effect with their attention being stolen. And I think that this is the biggest reason why we don't see great individuals anymore, because players are just cultivated and curated in this, with these tight parameters and this controlled environment, where you look at these goalkeepers now and going, I mean, we like to use clips to mock women's football with goalkeepers. If that was women's goalkeepers with Kinski and what have you, it would be in a blooper reel and everyone would be having a great laugh at it. What's going on here? Because I look at these goalkeepers and I'm going, John O'Shea would be a top goalkeeper today because he could play with his feet.
Who was it that famously went in goal against United during that 30 years ago? Was it Lucas Radaby?
Might have been for Leeds, yeah.
Lucas Radaby went in goal. I think it was him, and he pulled off an absolute worldly display that would probably be fitting of what you're seeing from so many of these guys in modern day. But this was a bad week all round of Champions League football for the Premier League sides, and conversations have now started opening up about the possibility of even losing that 5th spot for the Champions League next season. Now, I think given the European coefficients, it would take an awful lot for that to occur. But it's been some serious kick in the arse for what is supposed to be the elite of Europe's most dominant division, isn't it?
Shaun, it just raises a lot of questions to me about, the Premier League is so uniquely hard to play in. Is that a good thing? Because whatever the characteristics of the Premier League are, it's not translating to European titles. I mean, it's not translating the Ballon d'Or winners now. I think Ballon d'Or winners, it's heavily biased towards players in Spain. I would say that would be true. I think the last English-based player was Rodri to win it. Prior to that was Ronaldo. But you're looking at that going, for all the Premier League strengths, it should be translating financially everything. It should be translating to European titles. The best players in the world still go to Real Madrid. And I don't know. I mean, it's Premier League to me is a great spectacle. You have a lot of competitive balance, but when you look at the likes of City have unbelievable resources. Spurs have, in comparison to other European teams, I would say Spurs have a bigger budget than Atletico Madrid. And it just isn't translating, and it has great athleticism. But Premier League has had unique characteristics before. The English first divisions had unique characteristics before that they've had to change and adapt because of this very reason, because it wasn't translating to international titles or it's not translating to European titles. And I don't know, is it a good thing that the Premier League has such strong characteristics, but don't translate to win European leagues or European clubs?
Well, to me, I think I'd look at two things you've said there. If I take the smaller of the two in terms of Ballon d'Ors, when it comes down to voting on a continental scene, what is going to make more of a standout impression with a host of individuals across the continent? Is it going to be an ability to clatter into a defender when you're chasing a corner? Or is it going to be the ability to beat 5-6 men on the field? And this stems then into a further issue. It's something we spoke about recently regarding Arsenal, Everton, even Chelsea, when Arsenal played Chelsea recently, about the allowance in England of this real physical dynamic for set pieces. And the allowance of that does not carry over onto the continental game. Quite simply, if you do anything like that, you're going to be called up on it and you lose your set piece immediately. So what has become a major advantage, and something that I've seen people speaking about with Arsenal, in that they have found a way to win. Okay, good and well, they have found a way to win in England, but the way to win in England is not allowed when they transfer over onto the continental scene.
Yeah.
You take Arsenal and you look at what they've been doing in the Premier League, and I don't mean to just fall back on them just for the basis, but they are the benchmark of Premier League football at this moment in time, as much as I hate to say it. It's just outstanding. They go and they play a Leverkusen side that are less than a morsel of a fraction of what they were under Xabi Alonso, and they require the most nonsensical award of a last-minute penalty to actually salvage a draw. That's the difference between Premier League football and continental football. We've got 20 teams that go out and absolutely batter them, like they batter each other every single week. That's why the injury rate in England is so much higher than every other division. And then when it transfers over to continental football, it's not all about that. You can't have Gabriel and Saliba absolutely ramaging into the box. You have to actually work something out technically. And when you're not relying on that on a weekly basis and you're going up against sides like Real Madrid and Paris Saint-Germain, we see the fallout of that last night.
I think that some of it is cultural, to be fair. I think, the British, Irish mentality has always been they like a bit of physicality. They like tackles. They like there to be that cutting edge. Whereas the Spanish, the Portuguese, what have you, they're much more technically, adept than what we are. Now you can evolve that where you have the ratio is completely different. And I think, to be fair, the Premier League has done that. If you look at what football was in the early 90s, there's no question there's been an evolution towards developing technical players. But to be fair, the margins, England have come close recently in particular tournaments to winning tournaments, and the margin is thin. But you look at someone like Brazil, Shaun. I think Brazil lost its culture in its football. I think Brazil started developing players for export to be sold rather than developing players that are consistent with the Brazilian culture. Maybe the Brazilian culture has evolved, I don't know. But if you look at Brazil teams of the 1970. I mean, to me, the Carlos Alberto goal in the 1970 World Cup is football porn. You know, just everything about it. Carrega's goal against France in the '86 World Cup, just the way it was the synchronicity of their movements, like an orchestra. It's just absolutely beautiful. When you think about football being played the way it's supposed to be played, it's that. I mean, the 70 goal of Carlos Alberto is something that, you know, you don't mean to be dramatic here, but you see a bit of art and it moves you, or music, it moves you in a way that's not transactional.
No, I get it.
That moves me. I'm looking at that going, I'm experiencing a lot of different emotions watching that, where I'm like, this is football from the gods, the way it's supposed to be played. Brazil, you know, where is the Socrates and the Rivalinos? Now we're getting James, John, Freddie, and Paul coming out of Brazil. It's all everything has completely changed. And you're going, you know, I think it's English football, British football, and still has a big physical element because it's something that the fans appreciate. But I don't know. I mean, it's only one. It's one bad week for the Premier League, to be fair.
Oh, look, that could totally change with the next leg. But
Yeah.
I do think that the point still stands. And look, I'll stick on Arsenal just for the sake of it. There's one player that you can look at in their squad who really sort of typifies the point that I'm making, because he's gone from the Championship to Portugal and back to the Premier League. And regardless of playing in England in the Championship, he was playing in a side that played to his strengths. He went to Portugal with Sporting Lisbon and set the world on fire. And then he came back to Arsenal. He plays in a system that does not accommodate a striker. And we see a fella who almost looks like he's forgotten how to play football. Victor Gyökeres did not become a bad footballer overnight. It's all about systems, it's about styles, and it's about expectations within a team. And when you don't play to certain strengths and you look at something else, like, he's a big guy, he's a strong guy. I mean, he scored headers, but that's not the fulcrum of his game. And that's why he struggles so much in this system, because they do not care about leading through technical bravado and spearheading lines. It's just all about gaining a physical advantage. And ultimately, that is what we are seeing that's falling apart. Look, it is highly possible that that could all change in the second leg. You could easily see Chelsea beat Paris Saint-Germain 4-0. You could see City beat Real Madrid 4-0. It's unlikely.
I couldn't see it, but Arsenal maybe. But yeah, I mean, but you know, Chelsea, Shaun, are their own problems. I don't think Chelsea are reflective of a problem in English football. Chelsea are a problem, maybe a reflective of English football in the sense that there's not enough financial controls over how football clubs should be run. I mean, the way Chelsea have been run is a disgrace. It's just truly unbelievable. And everything that they're facing, it was entirely predictable. Every single step of this, you know, Todd Bowley Bally process, you're going, what are they doing? Where's the dividend? The only thing that had an obvious destination, obvious conclusion was, are they trying to get to the European Super League? Is there a European Super League somewhere down the line here that they think is an inevitability? Because it's hard to see what else they were trying to do. And now, of course, they're serious trouble. And if they don't qualify for the Champions League next season, I have no idea what's going to happen at that football club. You have so many players at that football club that never play football.
Oh, God,
and it's Arsenal. I still don't trust Arsenal. I still wouldn't trust Arsenal to win the league if they were 6 points clear or 7 points clear with 2 games to go. I still think they'd find a way to lose it. They get a points deduction or something. We'll find a way to lose it, right? Because they're looking like a team that's afraid to win the league. There's no way they'll be a threat in the Champions League to anyone. And once they get past, I think they'll get past Leverkusen. And then once they come up against a Real Madrid or someone like that, you know, they'll lose. But
never mind Leverkusen, the way Bodo Glimt are playing, they could give them a run for their money on the continent as well.
Bodo Glimt do not get enough credit. Do you think they're not even playing league games right now?
I know.
I mean, as 2 Irishmen, Shaun, they are a Norway are a perfect example of how because I think there's similarities in terms of population and size with Norway and Ireland. That's what you should be looking at. And that shows, I mean, what we're seeing at Bodo Glimt is not some serendipitous accident. It's a result of years and years and years of investment and at all levels of football. And that is an absolutely unbelievable story.
It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I could speak about that now for hours, but you know, let's move away from the Champions League. Let's look at United, obviously, because that's what the majority of people want to be speaking about here. I spoke with Barney Chilton yesterday from Red News. I'm sure everyone watching, listening this knows. And we had a nice chat about the lack of movement on a new Trafford, because obviously yesterday marked a year since it was announced that the club would seek to build a new stadium, with the task of somehow requiring 2 billion to be able to do so. Now, inevitably, as it was expected, that's not gone to plan for these wealthy individuals. Everything down to Freightliners ask for 400 million pounds when it was initially thought they'd be looking for about 50. You add to that the recent article that came out from The Athletic, which obviously highlighted that the borrowings have increased by about 3 or 4 million, on top of the club going into the revolving credit facility that little bit more. And then it kind of takes this 60 million pounds in improvements that we've spoke about on last season. It really just shows that they're insignificant in the grander scheme of things. And again, it further highlights the necessity for United to be in amongst it in the Champions League, to share what Bodo Glimt are going to have with the financial windfall that they're going to have. But when you look at it all, the stadium, the financial report that was released, it's all just a little familiar, Phil, isn't it?
I haven't looked at it forensically, Shaun. Looked at it a bit this morning. And by the way, before we get into this, please do support our fanzines, Red News, UWS. They are honestly, to me, the best medium that you can learn about Manchester United. The exceptionally skilled writers. It's vital to have an independent voice for the fans, and they're very informative. So please do support the fanzines. I'm a UWS subscriber, and Barney has been Red News, been behind Red News since its inception, I believe.
Yeah, since '87. Like I work with Red News. Obviously, I provide articles every single month for Red News. I have a column that goes out in that, and I couldn't be happier to be involved in that. I do whatever I possibly can, and I mirror what Phil is saying. This is the lifeblood of our fan base. You know, this is working class people going out and sharing their love. And it's so cheap to purchase. Like, I mean, you see some of the cost of magazines that you go into the store and you want to buy, and they're looking for 14, 15 quid for a magazine in the shop. You can pick one of these up for 3 quid outside the stadium. And one thing that I like, because I know Barney very well, if any of you are outside the ground, you see him, he would love it if you went over and said hello to him. You know, don't ever be shy to do so, because these guys are the lifeblood of the club. And like Phil said, they deserve all of our support.
Yeah, no, there's such a vital resource, and we're losing independent voices, Shaun, and they're written by the fans for the fans, exceptionally talented writers, and I don't think there's anything more informative about football, about Manchester United, than the fanzines. I have a UWS app, and I download that. I download the UWS app issues every single month. So definitely something that I would strongly encourage. Doesn't matter where you are, you don't have to get it mailed, you don't have to get it posted. You could go ahead and subscribe through the app. Does Red News have an app?
Does, yep. And well, it's not necessarily an app. What they'll do is you can subscribe to a monthly subscription, and they will email you your own unique link where you can download the magazine and you can read a PDF on whatever device you're looking at. It couldn't be easier.
Yeah, so look, I did say a little bit about the stadium, of course, and the fact that United looked at cost potentially changing the tent aspect to it. They were 50 million short on making the property offer. There could be a mandated purchase order for these. It's still at a very nebulous stage, Shaun, about what the stadium's going to look like. And when you look at what's going on right now globally and the instability in the world, it's very, very difficult to make confident predictions on where you're going to be 3-4 years from now, because we are in uncharted territory. And trying to get to you're getting financing for these stadiums, and you're still years and years out. This is changing by the day, and predictably, the cost of materials, especially when you've got global tariffs being put on them, are significantly increasing. Global, things like raw materials, like steel, everything, the commodities. I know about them. I import steel, and they are very volatile. And trying to get a locked-in price for a stadium a couple of years now away is very, very difficult. The costs are going to fluctuate. The price of property is going to heavily fluctuate, and so at the when at this stage of the game, until United start having something concrete and granular and actually moving this forward, I'm not even certain. I couldn't give you an estimated date of when we could even expect a new stadium. And by the way, Shaun, I think a new stadium is very important, don't get me wrong, or a stadium that's fit for purpose. But you take a look at Spurs. When Arsenal got their new stadium, we were told this was going to allow them to compete with everyone else. It never happened. Spurs very well could go down with that brand new stadium. And United are in a point where they badly need a renovated stadium, a refurbished stadium, or a brand new one. But it's hard to see where the money's coming from, and it doesn't help whenever you have an owner who's looking for public investment too. Well, I'm not certain that he's wrong about that either, because you look at City were the beneficiaries of taxpayer money, undoubtedly. United bring an enormous amount of commerce to the city. You also have to take into consideration that there's going to have to be transport routes that are going to have to be redesigned. So Manchester's going to have to invest. But when you're coming out and saying things that are extremely controversial, and I don't think it particularly helps your cause.
No, it certainly doesn't, especially when you look to flee to a different country and not actually contribute to something that you're trying to seek a bit of assistance with when you're trying to get it forward. You're speaking about the raw materials. It doesn't matter whether it's a stadium or whether it's something as simple as a house. I'm not going to name his name. There's a buddy of mine here, and it doesn't matter whether it's in Ireland, whether it's in Manchester, whether it's over in the States. He was putting plans together to build his property in around the time of COVID. They were lucky enough that they had the land, but they were going to build on this land. They managed to get the paperwork signed, I think, 24 hours before everything shut off for COVID that time. And had they too have got caught thereafter, it was 90 grand on top of what they had agreed to build their house, just over the space of 24 to 48 hours. And then the worst thing as well, and this is what's further applicable for Manchester United and moving forward, it's highly likely that the stadium, whether it goes ahead in the foreseeable future or even later, it's going to be further debt that is going to be required to get this. And for future borrowings are going to incur larger interest fees, Phil, because of the nature of the way the world finances are running. So we're already in massive debt. You're looking at gauging further debt with higher interest rates. There's been lots of debts consolidated to alleviate of lower interest rates along the way. But any future borrowings, which look like they're going to be mandatory, are going to incur further interest rates. And then obviously that's not even taken into consideration the problems that Radcliffe has at Ineos, because they've obviously implied that they're not going to have dividends paid out for a 5-year period to try to bring some sort of stability into the Ineos framework. So it's not as straightforward as people think here.
Shaun, you look at the American economy, it's hemorrhaging jobs. There's a lot of nervousness amongst investors that whenever we look at of course, the war with Iran, about what that will do to commodity pricing, what that's going to do to price of oil, all second, third order effects and things it's going to have on a lot of uncontrollable variables that, when you're talking about something on that size, it is, I was listening to David Dean talk about this at Arsenal when they were talking about building their stadium and what they had to do and how difficult it is. These never come in under budget. They always come in over. And United are already heavily leveraged. If they weren't heavily leveraged, then I think they would be able to secure the financing very easily. But now you're looking at United going, When Arsenal and stuff were getting financing and stuff, there was no risk that they could get relegated, right? That seemed absurd. You look at where United finished last season, Shaun. It doesn't bode well for when you're sitting down with financier. You look at Spurs. This is a very real. This is a very real potential that you have to put in there. That is a very legitimate risk that seems absurd, but this is the consequences of such failure on the field. Is that it's not as guaranteed as it once was. Don't get me wrong, Shaun. I'm not saying that there's a very high probability that United would go down. I don't think that will happen. But United are very highly leveraged, and they need to be in the Champions League. Not qualifying for the Champions League is catastrophic for United. And are we confident that United are going to always be in the top 4 teams in the Premier League? I'm not. I mean, how long has it been since United finished inside the top 4 with any consistency? So there's just, Arsenal had to get the Emirates money up front from their sponsor. They had to do a lot of that. There's no chance of Ineos financially doping United, that's for sure. And you look at Ratcliffe selling off fringe assets relative to Ineos, and you look at the Glazers, they're starting to make moves on cricket and stuff. I'm not even confident Jim Ratcliffe will still be the owner of this football club in 3-4 years. It wouldn't surprise me, considering the criticism that he's taken. If United don't qualify for the Champions League and you continue to accrue losses, for him to put this football club up for sale, I mean, he has to be looking at that going, I'm in my mid-70s.
Is he 73?
Thereabouts. It hasn't gone the way he thought this was going to go. And so imagine United don't qualify for the Champions League this year. I just think that right now, you could probably secure financing if you were a Real Madrid or someone that's a complete shoe-in for Champions League qualification every year, where you can, it's not guaranteed revenue, but you can more or less leverage, get loans and leverage the company off the back of the confidence that you're going to get that money. I look at United now and going, how could you predict anything with confidence 2 years from now? I mean, everything that we're seeing right now is still relatively fragile. And I'm sorry to say that United Stadium is in such a dilapidated state entirely because of the people that only Ineos own the football club with. I mean, this is the other question, Shaun. For the Glazers have never really cared about investment in infrastructure in United. Ratcliffe had to come in and redo Carrington. So how much of an appetite do they have to continue to leverage United and their revenue off the back of something they don't really care about? They would probably rather refurbish Old Trafford with a small investment to get it compliant at the very least, with modern stadia, than put, if whatever we have to pay back in interest comes out of our dividends, comes out of what I know there's a, I think it was 3 years they're not allowed to take dividends out, but that's not that far away.
There's a lot of variables to be taken into consideration here. Obviously, you're correct in what you're saying. It's highly possible in the next 3 to 4 years that Radcliffe may not be there. I checked there just after I said it. He is 73. But a lot of people are kind of looking at it now because of how well things have turned under Carrick, that because we're in the position that we're in, anything but Champions League football would feel like a defeat. At the start of the season, the prerogative and the priority for Ruben Amorim was European qualification, ideally through the Champions League, but that the Europa League would also provide enough of an assistance to be able to achieve what they wanted. It was the Conference League that was something that wouldn't be beneficial in any way. But a lot of it has come around due to the upturn in form. And, I can understand it. If someone was to say to you right now, with the position that we're in, with less than 10 games left, if you don't get Champions League football, it will feel quite disappointing. but there's so many things that can occur between here and there. When you're speaking about going and getting loans and getting financial support without the certainty of Champions League football, I think Manchester United are one of those enigmas, though, Phil. Regardless of the situation, they fill the stadium week in, week out. You look at the way things are right now, we're still filling out Old Trafford every single week.
Yeah, you can still fill it out, Shaun, but what really matters to banks is your revenue. I mean, there's full houses in Germany every week. What matters to banks is what can you offer as collateral? When you're using projected revenue, because it all projected revenue is not guaranteed. They've obviously got guarantees through their TVD, but all the other, you can't say anything with a high degree of confidence about transfer revenue, because United should always be at a net loss in terms of a football club like United should have. They're not trying to sell their best players, so they are going to sell players on the cheap, because most of the time when they're selling players, it should be as a result of a player not being good enough, not fulfilling their promise, or it's a young player that'll never make it into the first team. Then you're talking about European revenue. There is no way that any bank, any financial institution is going to look at United over the last 60 days, 90 days, and say that is that body of work is significant enough to where we are confident of projections in the future and lending new money based on the fact that we're confident that type of form will continue. No way that's happening. And you look at things like United forsaking 45 million in transfer revenue to get money up front. I mean, Shaun, that's not what a healthy business does. That tells you that there's a cash flow problem, and I don't. There's just so many. There's just so many negatives. There's just so many things to make you nervous. So many pitfalls going forward that I'm looking at it going, the risk with United right now. I mean, look at Barcelona. Being a massive football club's not enough to save you from that. Creditors could have easily foreclosed on Barcelona. So I think with Jim Ratcliffe, you're going 73. Let's say he does keep the football club. What's the contingency? Who's going to take over from him? Is he going to send this to a family member? Because what was Malcolm Glazer? Malcolm Glazer was in his mid-70s when he bought United, right? And turned it over to his kids. And they are really responsible for what we've seen because they used it as an ATM and he told them to do it. We need to know who's going to follow Jim Ratcliffe, even if he keeps a football club. And how much does this hamstring United in the transfer market? I know this seems a bit glib to be talking about stuff like that, but that's a very relative factor because Arsenal building the new stadium heavily impacted their ability to buy. Then you can get stuck for years. And you're going, okay, what's the cost benefit here? And it's by no means a foregone conclusion. There's so many things, so many hurdles that need to be cleared before. I mean, it's just hard to see where you need to find the room on their balance sheet to be able to pay off a massive stadium loan.
Yeah, absolutely it is. I don't think there's a whole lot of people who could give you a stable answer or any sort of a proper synopsis about that because there's not too many situations like Manchester United. In this particular thing, it's a global monster that has been run into the ground over 2 decades of financial mismanagement, Phil. And this is why they're seeking such massive government supports and why they're trying to offset various different loans that they have to consolidate them to get lower interest rates because there isn't a good cash flow scenario. Yeah. There isn't a good financial situation in the football club, but this is all evident. It's most of it is public knowledge because of what they have to do in the stock market. I mean, it'll be very interesting in moving forward to see what way they go with this, because I can't possibly give the answers. I'd like to think I'm fairly shrewd and up to date with what's going on here. But, I mean, anything is speculation from here out, Phil, it's literal financial speculation.
Shaun, the financial volatility right now in the markets and what we have projected in the future is not healthy. And I sit in quarterly meetings with with people that run commodity markets, because one of my businesses, we import steel, and it is incredibly nervous. I mean, we were going through COVID, you were having constant increases all the time, and now there's just so many arteries to this that are connected that you don't even think about. And of course, the price of fuel. Any of us will know all about this. Being a petrochemicals company, nobody can have any confidence in predicting what's going to happen over the next 6 months, because usually when you have a big global superpower that behaves a certain way, the future is relatively predictable, because they've been behaving a certain way, good, bad, or indifferent, for the last 40, 50 years. But every day we wake up to a new reality that's nothing like the one we had before. And absolutely nobody has any confidence that institutions are going to hold up. And of course, the acceleration of AI and how that's affecting, that's affecting global finance, how that's affecting industry. I mean, there's just all these intersectional variables that have such a massive impact on the future that, and the law of accelerated returns, our technology is just, it's out of control. And, you have a situation where you're talking about things like UBI, universal basic income, for people who don't have jobs. If there's no consumers in a market, we are in serious uncharted territory. And how quickly AI is completely changing how we go about our lives every day, and how useful your skill set is. This is I mean, if you look at our kids in school today, they're learning things that will be meaningless in 5 years. How do you predict that? How do you predict that going forward? How do you have any confidence? I mean, what is AI going to do to the TV market? There's just, I don't know. I don't know anything about financing on that level, but I do know that trying to secure long-term financing now for things on that scale is not as straightforward as it once was.
No, absolutely not. And normally I have some sort of a bridge here that I could deviate to start speaking about football. There's no easy way to deviate to speak about football from finances here.
Perfect example, right? There's a place down here in LA where you can go in and have a 3D experience like you're sitting in Old Trafford, right? And I've done it.
And what's that? Is that like the screens all around you?
So yeah, you go in and you feel like you were sitting in Old Trafford. You can just the way they have these cameras set up, absolutely incredible. And it's a panoramic experience. You feel like you're sitting in the stadium. You feel like you're sitting, the way the audio, the way you experience the match, the views. I mean, you go to a movie theater now, there's no one in them. Why? Because people just sit at home now and watch it with Netflix. You take a look at how volatile this World Cup is this summer, right? And the fact that, will Iran even be in the World Cup? We don't know. There's just so many new things that are happening that make it entirely difficult to predict the future, and how people consume sports and how people consume, that experience it's becoming more and more realistic just to sit at home. And that that's destroying restaurants because people don't go out as much anymore. I went out on a Saturday night a couple of weeks ago. The UFC was on. I'm not telling you a word of a lie. Saturday night, right? I went to pictures, movies with my girlfriend, and then we went, and I'm walking out and I'm going, this is dystopian. There's nobody out. And so you're looking at all the predictors of the future, and you're going, this is, we talk about stadiums. I don't even know. You look at the last 3-4 years. Could you ever have predicted we're sitting doing what we're doing right now? No way. I mean, there are no norms anymore.
Yeah, but I don't think I get what you're saying, and across broader society, yes. But I don't think Manchester United and Old Trafford has to worry about a lack of bums going on seats, Phil. It's constantly full. There's people always looking to get in there and watch Manchester United play. Call
But
it
you're not talking about the next
call it
3 or 4
an
years, Sean.
anomaly, if you will. What are you saying?
You're not talking about the next 3 or 4 years, though. You're talking about the next 30 years. Because that's what that financing is going to be based on, is making sure your bums on seats for the next 10, 20 years.
Okay, but respectfully then, if you're taking it like that, I know the football club has been run into the ground, but it hasn't been run into the ground by the individuals that have been in there for the last 2 years, and I think
Sure.
everyone can agree with that, regardless of your
Of
feelings
course.
about them.
Yes.
So, if you're looking at this situation and you're considering what we're talking about over the next 15 to 30 years, and you're looking about a stadium that's going to be the Wembley of the North, surely these individuals have sat down with financial forecasters to deem that this type of project is worthwhile in moving forward. Not only that they can hold football games inside in there, but it can also be a venue in the North where they can generate additional income, no?
Yeah, but see, this is what I'm saying, right? Is that if you look at how we consume entertainment today, it's very different to what we have done when we were kids, right? And the way that these digital interfaces, augmented reality and stuff are working, it's giving you a simulated experience without leaving the house, right? And when you look at
How much does that cost, Phil? Sorry to interrupt you, but how much does it cost to go into that simulated experience that you were talking about?
$20, Sean,
That's all.
that's it.
Okay.
So it cost me $20 to get in there. Now they serve you could buy food, everything. It could obviously significantly increase the ticket price. But that technology is becoming cheaper and cheaper. And what we're talking about here is when you have things like the World Cup that are charging $5,000 a ticket. Now you're putting people under selection pressure. I'm creating a market for the simulated experience at a fraction of the cost because people just can't afford it. And that simulated experience has affected so many other things that were unthinkable. In America, when was the last time you wanted to go to the movie theater? Like I just happened to go because we were looking for something to do. I can't even remember the last film that came out where you were excited to watch. Netflix has destroyed that. People, and it's all the ancillary costs associated with it, right? So football, now you're paying for parking. You have parking. The cost of paying for parking in some instances is more than the ticket, right? And Ticketmaster are adding on all these extra fees. And Vegas, Shaun, it's a ghost town because of this. People can now gamble at home, right? There's gambling's become more and more legal throughout the US in certain pockets. This is a big problem. The people don't even meet each other anymore. Now it's all online, dating websites, people before someone going to a bar. This is causing people to retreat. And some of it is cost necessity, but I don't know how anyone in this current climate can look at the next 10, 15 years, unless you have significant collateral where if things go to shit, we get our money back. Where's United's collateral? United's collateral is all based on their future earnings. I mean, it's hard. I'm sure, that I don't think football as a spectator sport is going to disappear in the next 10 years. But if people can't afford to go, we look at what we have here in the United States. We don't have a significant fan culture because as soon as the demand gets to a certain point where they can replace a fan for a customer, you're gone. And Europeans aren't exactly morally and ethically superior. We're the same. You know, we're bitches of the dollar too. I have so many questions about how we're going to view these sports and going forward. I still think you need an atmosphere in a stadium to add to the event, but I don't think it's guaranteed that you're going to sell that stadium out every week going forward.
Well, would it be fair to say that, given where you are, Phil, that an awful lot of your thought process is bound by your cultural surroundings as well?
No, it's not. It's bound by no. I think that the U.S. has a different culture. So U.S. always has a fanatical sport and culture. They can sell stadiums out primarily because they don't have that regional identity. So if the LA Lakers moved to New York, they could sell that out, right? United couldn't do that if they moved London, because sport here is like going to an event and they go into an orchestra. It's not a religious fanatical. I mean, there's some of that, but not a religious fanatical ritual that you do. So, Shaun, if we're kidding ourselves if we think that's not what's happening in Europe right now. I mean, Emilia Butragueño came out here decades ago to learn from the LA Dodgers about how to use marketing and commercial aspects of Real Madrid, and exactly he copied that model. I mean, I spoke to him in LA about it, and Europe is the Premier League looks at the NFL and wants to copy everything. I mean, where do you think VAR came from?
No, I understand it, Phil. I get it. I do, but I still hold reservations about certain things. Obviously, I'm apprehensive about where the money is coming from. I'm apprehensive about the high rising interest rates that are going to come alongside that.
Yeah.
I just feel like I'm 3 decades going over to Old Trafford. And I mean, I can see it myself. One of the first games that I ever went to was when Pete Molyneux held up the banner inside in the ground written on the bed sheet against Sir Alex Ferguson when we
Yeah.
were losing against Crystal Palace. I've seen a lot of changes. Obviously, a lot of that change has come with me because I have grown. I've got older as I've come along. But the one constant, regardless of all the changes, because technology wasn't there like it was, like
Right.
it is today, but the
Mhm.
one constant is that there's a continuous desire for people to get into the ground, and I just think, regardless of all the changes that we're seeing around the world and regardless of all of the potential faults that could occur, I just think that Manchester United is an enigma in that perspective. I think that you could treble the capacity of Old Trafford and you would still have the demand for people to go in and put bums on seats inside in there. It's something that we can go back and forward on for quite some time because there's no correct answer on this. And I am obviously conscious for the length of time we've been speaking for now. We're nearly talking an hour and we haven't really spoken about the football. We do
Yeah.
have we do have Villa on Sunday. It's obviously going to be Carrick's first chance to respond to adversity, something I've said several times after what is now an 11-day break. And Chelsea play Newcastle the evening before, but we have an opportunity to build a 6-point lead on Liverpool because they play Spurs later in the day. What are you expecting to see after such a layoff following defeat against Newcastle, Phil?
I think that I want to see United have a tempo from the first whistle that they didn't have against Newcastle. It shows that if we talk about a reaction to a defeat, and this is something that we have to learn from Carrick and Manchester United. How do they deal with a defeat? This is an important question we needed to get answered during Carrick's caretaker tenure, and not. I don't want to find this out next season. And I want to see a response. I want to see a response from a United team that's desperate to finish in the Champions League spaces. This is a game that you have to win. This is a game that's going to be hugely consequential in the outcome of the season. It's against an Aston Villa team that is on its knees, but they'll be coming to United thinking this is the perfect time to fix that slide and to correct it. So I want to see a United team go out there and showing intensity and showing a tempo in the game that we haven't seen. Really, for I think Newcastle was the zenith of that, but I want to see United um, play with a tempo and an intent that shows that they're desperate to finish inside the Champions League. Not a team that's just desperate to find cruising altitude of where the bare minimum is to win. So we don't have to spend just an ounce of energy. We don't have to. I want to see a team that wants to win that game, not just 1-0, 2, 3, 4-0. And I think that's exactly how they need to respond.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, particularly when Villa are going playing in Europe this evening as well, they're going to have less time to be able to recuperate after that. So it should give that bit of further advantage,
Well,
given the lack of fatigue that's going to be in the players running up to it.
let me ask you, Shaun, because we
Yeah.
talk about whether Carrick should get the job or not. And, there's other people such as Luis Enrique and stuff. And I was thinking about this. If Luis Enrique had have got caretaker job at United at the same time as Carrick did, do we think, I don't know the answer to this question, but do we think Luis Enrique would have done the same, got the same results as what Michael Carrick would have done? Do we think what Michael Carrick has done is not beyond a Luis Enrique or someone like that? Or do we think no?
I don't think Luis Enrique, if he came in the same time as Carrick, would have got the same response from the team and the same results. Quite simply because Luis Enrique is a stylistic type of coach. He sets out in a particular way. We discussed something quite similar about this last week when we were speaking about Manuel Ugarte. Manuel Ugarte was deemed surplus to requirements because he wasn't able to achieve what Luis Enrique wanted to achieve with a football team. You said he wants to have
Yeah,
technical midfielders that are able to hold on to the football and be able to control play. This is going to lead into some of the questions that we have, but Luis Enrique is the prime example. When a team is looking to rebuild itself and try to establish the style of football that they want to play, midfield is the prime position that they need to look at. If you go and you fill your midfield full of Manuel Ugartes, then you're looking for havoc. You're looking for anarchy in the middle of the midfield, ball winning, big tackles. And in all honesty, you probably won't control the majority of possession. But if you put really delicate footballers into the heart of midfield and you allow them to play football their way, you're going to have more possession, you're going to have more control, and ultimately that's going to shape the outcome of so many fixtures. I think if Luis Enrique came in when Michael Carrick did, then he's trying to establish right from day one his
yeah,
principles,
yeah.
and that's going to cause multiple problems.
Yeah, I think that's where I do have some sympathy in the comparison with Ruben Amorim. Ruben Amorim wasn't trying to just get United to the end of the season and win a few games. He was trying to implement ideas and the
Mhm.
structure in the middle of the season, which is obviously very, very hard to do. And you need to do that off the back of wins. I think where Carrick has had it's been a bit where it's worked in his favor is he's not expected to come in and implement the structure and ideas because he's caretaker manager, so he's just expected to come in and ready the ship, steady the ship, and get United to a point where where they're winning games of football and it feels good to play football again, and then worry about all that in the summer. So yeah, you're probably right. Um, but if Luis Enrique was the caretaker manager, but the point that I'm trying to make is, has Carrick done anything that exceptional that would be beyond the Luis Enrique? Because I don't know the answer to this question. Like, I think if Michael Carrick gets United in the Champions League, he should be one of the favourites for that job because it's a remarkable achievement. But we're also asking a different question: Who, going forward, is Michael Carrick the best guy to win Manchester United the league? Because next season his remit and expectation is going to be completely different. He's going to have to get a Manchester United that where this isn't an anomaly. This isn't, a feel good story. This is the expectation. And you'll see how quickly people turn on him. I mean, after that defeat against Newcastle,
Oh,
people
yeah.
used it as an example that he wasn't good enough. And you have to deal with the truly ridiculous situation of just being butchered every week by better ex players.
I think regardless of who's in the hot seat and regardless of how many games they go unbeaten, they will suffer the same fate after one fixture that doesn't go in their way, because that's just the nature of being a Manchester United coach. You know, what we're speaking about right now leads into one of the questions that came through. It came by email from a chap called Paul Stokes, and he had asked me to open the conversation about what Carrick actually needs to do between here and the end of the season if he is to earn the permanent position. And it's such a broad question, because you're absolutely right in what you're saying. When it comes to next season, we would like to think we're going to have a longer run in the domestic cups. We're going to have European participation. So something that I've said to you several times about him not having to make any structural and actual positional personnel changes other than Benjamin Sesko and other than those that have been enforced by injury. He's going to have to get better at squad management. He's going to have to show he's capable of doing that, of rotating players, and also getting the best out of an entire squad to maximize the club's opportunities in every single competition. But that is a question for the future. And we're not going to know if he's capable of doing that unless he's actually here. So what does he need to do this season to convince hierarchy that he is the man to go forward to next season like that, Phil?
Look, I think it's he's got one goal. That's Champions League football, and regardless of how he achieves it, I think that anything other than that, if he plays attractive, exciting football but doesn't qualify for the Champions League, that's going to feel like a failure.
Mm-hmm.
If he has to sacrifice one between qualifying for the Champions League and playing exceptionally attractive football, any of us are going to want him to sacrifice the attractive football. I think the first two games, no one really knows how Carrick's going to play. Then, of course, teams start to see consistency in the lineup. They start to see consistency in how they're playing, so teams adjust. And so inevitably it becomes a bit harder. Carrick doesn't have the personnel to make any type of tactical changes or change how United look. He doesn't have time to do it either. So I think that we have to be realistic and say this is a guy that has had no ability to recruit in the market. He has to make the best with what he's got. He's already been getting injuries to key players. If he gets that team into the Champions League, I think that's his only expectation, his only goal. He gets him in the Champions League, regardless of how he does it. I think that's an unbelievable achievement, to be honest.
I'd agree with you. As well as that, when he actually arrived and it was confirmed that he was there, it became very clear very early that his primary goal was to obtain Champions League qualification. So surely there has been some sort of a conversation prior to that behind the scenes that states, if you can actually achieve this, then you're putting yourself in prime position to be here next season and thereafter. Also, I think it really fortifies that when you see him speaking about transfer targets in the summer, like when he's been asked about the left wing, for example, and he says that it's highly likely that they're going to look at recruiting that. It has a flavor that this is a man who is thinking for the foreseeable future, not just necessarily for the remaining games of this season.
He has to think they got Shaun. If I'm
I would think so.
Doing exactly that. If he's sitting, talking about I'm out at the end of the season, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I'm him, possession is 9 times to the law. You have to be thinking long term. I'm getting this Manchester United job, and I'm going to operate off that premise.
Yeah, well, I mean, the allure of bringing in a Champions, like a multiple-time Champions League winning coach in Luis Enrique is obviously fantastic, but there's no guarantee he's going to hit the ground running in Manchester because he needs to play to a particular style and system. Will he get the time to be able to do that in Manchester United? Like our history has said, no, he won't. But this leads to another question that came through. I have it here from Niall Healy. You can be found at Niall Healy11 on Twitter. And he says, should we get into the Champions League next year and we strengthen with 2 midfielders and potentially a centre back, what is a realistic expectation for next season?
I mean, Shaun, if you look at United's rivals, right? I mean, there's a very real possibility that this is Pep Guardiola's last season.
Yeah, it's looking that way.
If Pep Guardiola finishes the season, he ends up leaving, you look around you, is there anyone that invincible? I think if a squad like that, you have to be looking at competing for a title.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look at when Arteta went from, I think it was 6th to 2nd or 5th or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, no one saw that title challenge coming.
And I look at this is not the Premier League of Guardiola and Klopp, where you're just talking about a level that is still so far away from United. You're looking at the fact that even under Carrick, if the Michael Carrick league table, Michael Carrick would be 2 points ahead of everyone else in the Premier League, right?
Mhm.
But Benjamin Sesko just got Player of the Month, and this is to me a top 6 squad when everyone's fit. You get those types of players in. Why wouldn't the competing for the title be the goal? I mean, what? United are in third right now. Should they not be looking to improve on that? Improving on that is second and first. They should be in a title race.
Yeah, 100%. When I was only thinking about this squad today because I produced an article earlier on based on a report that I had read from Pete Hall with the iPaper. He said that even though the central defence is not a priority, that the club has forecast the potential problems going forward with the injuries that we've had. And obviously the situation is still an unknown variable with Harry Maguire at the end of the season because he's obviously just turned 33 last week. He went on to state in twofold in his report that Maguire is considering a substantial drop in his salary to remain on a 1 or a 2 year contract, to go from 190 grand to 100 grand a week, to remain either for a season or two. But that on top of that, the club is looking at Murillo. He's shortlisted from Nottingham Forest. Now, if you're bringing in a player of that caliber, you're keeping Harry Maguire for a year or two to have that veteran sort of know-how about him. You've got Lissandro Martinez, Matthias de Ligt, you've got Lenny Yoro, and you've got Aidan Heaven. That's ample positions and ample options in central defence. You get onto your midfield, and if you can bring in 2 targets that we'll discuss next, but just to look at what Niall was saying there, if you're stacked in multiple positions and you have quality, and I think the most important thing, if you can be lucky enough to avoid injuries, which is something we seem to not be able to avoid on a perennial basis for as long as I can remember, that is a very strong squad with players like Senna Lamans getting that year experience in the Premier League heading into a second year. I see no reason why that club couldn't, once more, obviously, Champions League qualification is a must, but to have deep runs in domestic cups, to challenge for the Premier League, and maybe not necessarily to go and target winning the Champions League. But as I said to Barney yesterday, if you're not in it, you can't win it. So you can only establish how that team can carry on when they're actually there.
I think that is also an imperative objective when you're talking about keeping your best players. I mean, are we going to tell Bruno Fernandes, not next season, but the season after, we'll go for the league? No. Why do we keep deferring this? You know what? Manchester United, if that type of outlay doesn't bring a team that has an expectation of consistency, and this is not a great Arsenal team, this is not a great City team. Why? What else do we need? You know, like what? We'll also have some very talented young players coming from the academy knocking on the door next season, and you know, if all of a sudden the end of next season we're going to need to be replacing players we bought last season, you know, to get us to this level, we never quite get there. We're always a season away. I don't agree with that. I think that whoever takes this United job this summer, now of course United will have to recruit properly, and I think Champions League will be transformative in that sense. Your goal is to win this Premier League.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And that's going to lead us to one final question. And it is probably the most imperative thing when we're speaking about collaborating that squad to get us there next season to be challenging for the title. It comes from Shaun F., who is at United Fancast on Twitter. And he said that there's loads of midfield options to replace Casemiro, but we probably need to find the ideal partner for Mainu as well. Which player would you like for that job? And I know you set it out there amongst your audience yesterday to ask who their preferred options were, but asking you, which player would you like to see partner Kobbie Mainu in the Manchester United midfield, Phil?
Well, you know, I haven't given that deep thought. I really do like Connolly. I think he's someone that I would like to see in a midfield with Kobbie Mainu. But we're talking about, to me, I think what you need in that sense with Casemiro going is someone that can do a Garty's job with technique. So now we're looking at possibly a Camavinga, where we've seen rumours come out that there's United would have a potential interest in. They did want him before. I think Real Madrid would be interested in selling him. But it's hard for me to say. I mean, Baleba was obviously one of the ones that was heavily linked with United last summer. I haven't seen enough of him, Shaun, to make an educated decision on him. But United need someone in there that has technical quality, that has useful energy, that has technical quality, and is ready-made for the Premier League. I don't know if you can buy players abroad that are ready-made for the Premier League. They're rare, but you can still get them. And I think United are going to have to look at other alternatives outside of Baleba, Wharton, outside of Elliot Anderson, because I don't think United should be paying anywhere near 100 million for Baleba. I think there's better value out there than that. Elliot Anderson, from what people are reporting, I don't know either way, but Elliot Anderson, from what people are reporting, looked like he's favoured to go to City. Again, Adam Wharton, is he that? How good is he really? When we were talking about Adam Wharton, the way we were talking about him in an Amarim system, and that's of course what he was playing with Palace under Glasner. Is he? We're talking about Fede Valverde. Is he on that level? Where do we find players that are going to compete at the very highest level, week in, week out, world-class quality? Because that's what it's going to take. You can't get away with substandard players in midfield.
I think you've unlocked the core to this. It's not just about bringing in one midfield player. We need to bring in multiple midfield players. The club doesn't have, we've discussed this now in great detail already today, the club doesn't have the money to spend 200 million on bringing in Baleba and Anderson or Baleba and Wharton, because it just doesn't have it, especially when they're looking at strengthening the likes of left wing and potentially adding another central defender. I think what you're going to see this summer is one marquee signing that will be in the region of 100 million, and they'll probably proposition it in such a way that it can be made in multiple installments so as they can benefit the profit and sustainability rules. For what it's worth, I've almost digested this to the point that I'm sick of talking about it, but I love Adam Wharton. If you're looking at those three players, and they're the three that are constantly mentioned, Elliot Anderson, Adam Wharton, Carlos Baleba, I would go Elliot Anderson, Adam Wharton, Carlos Baleba. I think Elliot Anderson has the potential to transform any Premier League midfield that he goes to. What?
So I was talking to Ian. Sorry.
What was that?
Sorry, I was talking to Ian. I was telling him to shut the door. Sorry, mate. Go ahead.
Okay. I think Elliot Anderson has got
in the background. Sorry,
you're all right. I think Elliot Anderson has got the capability to transform any midfield, and I know that there's a lot of reports and humming and hawing about him going into Man City, but there's a lot to be said about Pep Guardiola being there and not being there, and him leaving, what that's actually going to bring in. Now, if anyone anywhere ever wanted to see the level of experience that I have in a broadcasting environment, that I'm able to deal with things, you've just witnessed it, okay? That's what I'm able to deal with.
But, I thought my microphone was on mute. Did you hear that?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, you absolutely terrified me. I thought I was after saying something wrong. But
sorry, my kids in the background here.
Yeah. I reckon there's going to be a whole lot of people listening to this podcast, and they're going to drop a cup of coffee or something on themselves at around the 1 minute 11 or the 1 hour 11 minute mark.
I thought it muted me.
But yeah, look, just touching on what Shaun said, I think if I was looking at a player that I wanted to bring in to partner Kobbie Mainoo, I think Elliot Anderson can partner anybody. But if he is indeed Manchester City bound, which I'm told that's not the case just yet, that United haven't given up hope of that, I would put my money on Adam Wharton as that marquee acquisition. Not to go against what you're saying.
Marquee?
I would look at him as a marquee acquisition, yeah, because I think he's that good. I mean, the difference between him and Valverde is experience at this moment, Phil. Valverde is going on 28. Adam Wharton has got many years to get there. And could Adam Wharton go in there and replace what Casemiro is able to do? No, he couldn't. But Adam Wharton is an international footballer who plays in a totally different mold to Kobbie Mainoo. He is more of a deep-lying, sit-back type of player.
He only has his goal in 3 years.
But he's not about scoring goals.
Hey, but Casemiro adds a lot of important goals to United. So he hasn't scored a goal in 3 years. 2024, 25, he had 0 goals and 2 assists.
You see, what Adam Wharton allows, especially in this conversation, though.
That's not a marquee signing for me. I'm sorry.
But you see, the thing is, you're looking at this as an advancement as to how you can get more out of Kobbie Mainoo. Because Kobbie Mainoo has the capacity to get the goals that Casemiro has got and then more. Because, you're looking at the likes of Sandro Tonali and what you're saying. What's Tonali going to offer a midfield alongside Kobbie Mainoo? Does Tonali become the further forward lying midfielder, or is he the one that sits behind Kobbie Mainoo in your eyes?
Well, it's a midfield 3, and I think that Tonali, with Kobbie Mainoo, you have to decide exactly what type of midfielder that he is. If you look at, I initially thought he was going to be a defensive type midfielder, creative defensive type midfielder that would sit deep. He's been played in a much more forward advanced position. I think that if you look at Casemiro is not truly a defensive type midfielder. He's someone that scores important goals. He's someone that covers a lot of ground. I think United need another midfielder in beside Kobbie Mainoo, who's a defensive midfielder. But I think United need more than one that can do what Mainoo do, because you're going to have to play multiple different games. Bruno Fernandes is going to need a replacement in a year. So I think you need someone that can do both. If I look at someone like Adam Wharton, mate, I just don't understand what 0 goals in the FA Cup, 0 assists. The League Cup, 0 goals, 0 assists in 24, 25, 25, 26. I'm sorry, what?
Well, you see, respectfully, Phil, we're after spending 200 million on fellas to put the ball in the back of the net already. Yeah, Adam Wharton is the guy that unlocks everything and puts us in a position where those fellas can put the ball in the back of the net.
I don't know, mate. So is he getting an assist to an assist?
It probably would fall along the line of what I was saying to you about Ahmad in having the penultimate pass before the assist.
But to me, those players are not marquee signings. A marquee signing to me is someone that can do the most difficult things in football, that score goals and create goals. If you're someone, I remember Cantona describing Didier Deschamps as a water carrier.
Okay.
Right? That's a water carrier to me. That's a guy that gives the ball to better players that could do what he can't do. And I don't like judging players purely on stats, but you have to be making a difference in games.
Well, look, you're saying Sandro Tonali. Sandro Tonali has not scored in the Premier League this year, and he's only got 2 assists.
That's because he's been putting bets on not scoring.
No, I think the long and the short of it, we need to bring in multiple players in midfield.
Stop using logic to beat my argument, will you?
I have been reporting about this for quite some time because I have it on good grounds that the club is looking at a Gomez. Gomez is a player that they're looking at bringing in. He's one of those shrewd acquisitions that you're talking about, 35 million euros from Sevilla. That's the type of player you need to bring in to bolster the squad. You need to have a marquee signing like Adam Wharton that I will hold my head on. And then you have the squad additions like Lucian Gomez. I also think João Gomez at Wolves is another fantastic player. Yes. I think he's a superb player. And all of those players unlock different characteristics inside in the team. But I will draw back on what I said earlier on, though. When you are rebuilding a football team, midfield is how you decide how you want to play. And if you bring in too many João Gomez's and too many Gomez, then you're never going to have control of an outcome of a game. I think the logical thing to do here is to bring in somebody who can get the very best out of Kobbie Mainoo. And I would like to think that the coaching team have some sort of an idea better than you and me as to what his best platform for this team is and moving forward.
But do you not think that unlocking Kobbie Mainoo has got a bit of unlocking Paul Pogba to it?
No.
Because to me, with the performance I saw Kobbie put in the other night against Newcastle, that concerned me. He's a young player. He shouldn't be putting that type of performance in. It's a brilliant player. I want to see him involved in Manchester United week in, week out. A player that does make a difference. I just think Adam Wharton? Is there a player in United's academy? I'm struggling to see why. I mean, I'm wrong about a lot of things, but and I might be wrong about this, but I honestly can't remember the last time I saw him where I was. I remember watching Declan Rice and stuff, going, "That's a top player." There was performances where I didn't watch West Ham every week, but there was performances that it was obvious that he was a top player. I can't remember anything like that with Adam Wharton, but.
Well, all you got to do is go back less than 2 months when we played Crystal Palace. And that was a team that had going to be in a similar situation to what Aston Villa are going to be in this weekend, that they played on a Thursday evening. Before they tired, Adam Wharton tore us asunder. Absolutely ripped us asunder until that everyone around him faded. Look, I mean, these things are unknown variables. Any player that comes to Manchester United is going to be presented with the same issue that every player is. Can you deal with the difficulties of playing for this football team? And we won't know until they actually arrive, Phil. So we shall see. I mean, Bruno Guimaraes for Newcastle, he's a hell of a player. I wouldn't mind him coming. Great footballer.
We just pay a fortune for Premier League midfielders, though.
Yeah, you're paying a lot for them.
But you can get a Sevilla at a decent price. Camavinga, I mean, you're talking about Camavinga. I'm talking about 40 million. I mean, that could be, of course, that could be shit, of course. But
if you could bring in a Gome and Camavinga for 75 million euros, that's a winner in anyone's book, surely.
We're talking about 100 million for Baleba, and we can get two of those midfielders for. The Premier League's inflation is just outrageous.
Absolutely, it is. Now, there was one final part of Shaun's question before we lead off. Probably the most important question thus far. He says, Beamish or Guinness, Phil?
Well, as I said, Shaun, you don't play hard to get with either as long as you're not banned.
I drink dirty water out of a welly. It wouldn't bother me.
No problem.
No bother at all. Look,
I
man.
wouldn't drink either, mate. I have standards.
Love it.
I do. My drink of choice is Jameson on the rocks.
Well, my man, this is something that we've just learned right now. We've not spoken about this before. We reckon we're kindred spirits. My drink of choice is Jameson on the rocks. And I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's just bog standard Jameson, whether we get any of the cask version. I always get the black barrel version gifted to me at Christmas, the one that's sat in the Guinness or the stout barrels for several years, and it gets that extra bit of creamy texture. But I tell you, Shaun, if we ever do come across you, whiskey on rocks, that'll do me just fine.
I don't drink as much beer as I used to because I don't like bloaty.
Yeah.
I'd rather sit over a couple of whiskeys than sit and drink 12 pints. I don't really drink that much beer anymore. And if I do drink a beer, I love Sapporo or Asahi. Right? Japanese beer that is absolute. Occasionally, if I go out to a restaurant and I get Sapporo or Asahi, it's one of the main reasons I go out. It's because I really like that Japanese beer. But most of the time, I just drink a JMO.
And for more insightful topics like this, ladies and gentlemen, be sure and tune in next week because we can start introducing whatever you want, food, clothing, whatever you want. We've got it all here. But look, thank you so much for your time once more again this week, ladies and gentlemen. It was a pleasure. If you have gotten over the fright that Phil gave you there about maybe 15 minutes ago, I'm still kind of struggling to get over that. But it was an absolute pleasure to spend this time talking with you all. And Phil, as always, a pleasure, my man, even though you kind of terrified me.
Much love. Thanks to all of you. Sorry for I thought my microphone was muted. But it was a terrible entertainment for my kid. My kids have guinea pigs, dogs, turtles, everything in here. And I have a 19-year-old that doesn't know word that you don't slam doors. Sorry about that. Much love to all of you. Cheers, Shaun. All the best, mate. Have a great weekend. We'll be back next week, of course, after the Villa game. We'll see if we can bang something out on Sunday. But,
absolutely. And everybody, keep getting your questions through. We love answering these. It's a bit of cracks. So send them through and we will get to as many as we can at the end of every single show. We promise.
Yes, folks. Thank you very much. Cheers, Shaun. All the best, mate.
See you, pal.
See ya.